Hey, welcome back. You know, I've always been fascinated by the things our bodies do without our conscious permission. A nervous twitch, a shiver down your spine, a laugh that escapes at the worst possible moment. But what if your body decided, completely on its own, to dance? Not for a few seconds, but for days. Until your feet were bloody, your ribs cracked from exhaustion, and still, you couldn't stop. That's not a metaphor. It's a historical fact, and it's one of the strangest medical mysteries ever recorded. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi, and this is Hidden Histories, the Untold Files. Today, we're traveling to the sun-baked streets of Strasbourg in the height of summer, 1518. Our case file, the dancing plague. It began, as so many things do, with one person. In mid-July, a woman named Frau Troffea stepped into the narrow street and began to dance. Not a joyful jig, but a relentless, compulsive, and strangely silent convulsion. She danced for hours, then for a day, then for nearly a week. Exhaustion would knock her down. She'd sleep a few fitful hours, and her feet would start moving again, as if pulled by invisible strings. The authorities were baffled. They did what they thought was logical. They had her taken to a shrine in the mountains, hoping to cure her. But by then, it was too late. Because the dancing had spread. Within a week, more than 30 people were dancing in the streets. Within a month, the chronicles tell us the number swelled to over 400. The city council, desperate and terrified, came to a conclusion that seems absurd to us now. They decided the cure was more dancing. They cleared a marketplace, built a wooden stage, hired musicians and professional dancers to keep the afflicted moving, thinking they could somehow dance the poison out of their blood. Can you imagine the scene? The sweltering heat, the smell of sweat and fear, the sound of pipes and drums fueling this macabre, unstoppable ball. People were collapsing. They were dying from strokes, heart attacks, sheer physical devastation. And still, the dancing went on. So what was happening here? For centuries, the dominant explanation was mass hysteria, or what they called in the Middle Ages, St. Vitus's dance. The idea is that this was a psychogenic illness, a physical manifestation of extreme psychological stress. And let me tell you, Strasbourg in 1518 was a pressure cooker. The region had suffered a series of devastating harvest failures. Famine was rampant. Diseases like smallpox and syphilis were cutting through the population. The social fabric was tearing under extreme inequality. The collective psyche was primed for a breakdown. In this view, Frau Troffea's initial dance was a desperate, unconscious cry for help, a hysterical conversion, and in a community vibrating with shared trauma, it spread like a behavioral virus. People saw it, feared it, and perhaps, on some deep level, understood it. And so their bodies mimicked it. It's a compelling theory. We see modern examples, like the Tanganyika laughter epidemic or school outbreaks of twitching and fainting. The mind, under enough pressure, can make the body do terrifying things. But, and this is a big but I've been wrestling with, is that the whole story? It feels almost too neat. To dismiss hundreds of people dancing themselves to death as just mass hysteria feels like we might be missing a piece of the puzzle. It's a label that can sometimes stop curiosity rather than deepen it. So, let's entertain another possibility, one that was actually the first suspicion of the terrified Strasbourg Council: poison. Specifically, the poison from a fungus called ergot. Ergot grows on damp rye, a staple grain in Europe at the time. It's a powerful neurotoxin. When ingested, it causes a horrifying array of symptoms known historically as St. Anthony's fire: burning sensations in the limbs, violent muscle spasms and convulsions, hallucinations, and gangrene. The spasms could, to a panicked observer, look like a grotesque, uncontrolled dance. The famine conditions meant people were likely eating spoiled, moldy grain. Could an ergot poisoning outbreak have been the spark? It's a solid theory on the surface. The timeline of the harvest and the outbreak fits. The symptoms have a vague overlap. But here's where my engineer's brain starts picking at the details. Ergotism causes agonizing pain and crippling contractions. Victims are incapacitated. The Strasbourg dancers, according to accounts, danced for days. They displayed a terrifying endurance, not the debilitating, bedridden agony of ergot poisoning. Also, why would the hallucinations and spasms manifest so uniformly as dancing? Culture shapes illness. If your community fears a curse that makes you dance, your hysterical symptoms might take that form. But poison doesn't care about local folklore. A toxin would cause a wider, messier array of physical reactions. So while poison is a tantalizing suspect, the evidence doesn't quite fit the crime scene. Which brings me back to the mind, not just as a vessel for hysteria, but as a powerful cultural receiver. You see, Strasbourg wasn't the first dancing plague. There had been a dozen smaller outbreaks across Europe for centuries. There was a well-established, terrifying folklore around a curse from Saint Vitus or other saints that would condemn you to dance. The belief was real, potent, and universally known. So when Frau Troffea started dancing, she wasn't performing a random act. She was acting out a deep-seated cultural script for unbearable suffering. And everyone who saw her recognized the script immediately. Their terror wasn't just of a strange illness. It was the terror of seeing a familiar legend come to life. In that atmosphere of shared belief and shared desperation, the psychological leap to join in becomes, if not understandable, at least traceable. The body, seeking an expression for the inexpressible pain of famine and despair, chose the only language the culture had provided for such a crisis, the dance of the cursed. Sitting here in New York, surrounded by a different kind of relentless rhythm, I think about what this story tells us. We love clear answers. It was a poison. It was a mental breakdown. But history, like the human condition, is rarely so binary. I see the dancing plague not as one thing, but as a perfect and tragic storm. The biological trigger, maybe malnutrition, maybe a minor illness, maybe even a tiny, forgotten dose of something toxic in one woman. The psychological tinderbox of a traumatized population, and the cultural kindling of a powerful, ready-made myth. Combine them on a hot Strasbourg summer, and you get an epidemic of movement. It was a physical manifestation of a community scream. Sometimes, the mystery isn't about finding the single culprit. It's about understanding the landscape of despair that allowed the phenomenon to take root. The people of Strasbourg weren't just dancing. They were embodying a pain that had no other outlet. In a strange, heartbreaking way, it was the only language left to them. Thank you for listening to this journey into one of history's strangest chapters. If you found this exploration compelling, please do share the episode with someone else who loves a good mystery. For more untold stories from the shadows of history, make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. This is Ibnul J. Farabi for Hidden Histories, The Untold Files, a production of Light Not Studios. Visit us at lightnotstudios.com. Until next time, keep questioning the stories you think you know.